Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning is on the art of writing. Many people have a dream of writing a book, but unfortunately never realize it. Those who have done so will tell you that it's not easy, but the process will make you see things in yourself, whether it be creative thoughts through fiction, your worldwide view, or your magnificent uniqueness of your own personal journey. We're privileged to be joined today by three local writers who all have a unique story to tell and decided to put their thoughts and experiences on paper. My first guest is an active member of the Milwaukee business and philanthropic communities. She worked 20 years in Fortune 100 and 500 companies as a community relations and HR executive, and it is my pleasure to welcome Miss Mary J. Dowell, author of the book, Playing Through the Fence. How are you, Mary?
I'm well. How are you, Andrea?
I'm doing well. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, and thank you for having me.
Yes, as I mentioned, you spent 2 decades in corporate America and recently retired. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I do want you to tell our viewers at home a little bit more about your background.
Well, if I start early on, my career really started in the medical field. I always wanted to be a nurse. And when we talk about leadership and the leader that's within you, certainly that was something that I aspired to be, and I did become a nurse for a while, but early in my career I did change from medical to the business career, and where I was working in human resources for large manufacturing companies. I worked my way up the corporate ladder, if you will, and during that time I found out that working with people, both in the medical field and in HR, that there was a consistency that I noticed with people. They always wanted to know what resources are available to me to become a good leader, to be my optimum self. And so leader development became a focus for me, and trying to help others and inspire others to find that leader that's within them will always be my passion. And because I really believe that there are leadership qualities in each and every one of us, whether they're unrecognized, therefore unutilized, but my focus is to make people aware that it's there.
Okay. And when did you realize that you wanted to actually write a book?
Well, that's really funny. First of all, let me say, that was not on my bucket list to write a book. One day I was at lunch with a colleague. This was 8 years before I retired, long before I retired. And all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, I announced to her that I was going to write a book. And she was congratulating me, and I interrupted her and said, and I'm going to call it Playing Through the Fence. Now, that is what I refer to as my moment of divine inspiration, because that was the first time I had ever consciously thought of writing a book, let alone the title.
Right.
So that was just really out of nowhere for me, but I did move forward. And of course, in the early days, I didn't realize what it was all about. I just knew I was pushed to do it. And now I do understand. It's just a continuation of what I've always done. I've worked in, like you said, the medical field and philanthropy, community. So I've always worked with people, and I always paid it forward. The book, and what I'm trying to convey in the book, is to pay it forward. So I'm paying it forward, what I've always given back.
I love that. So this title, it just came to you. It was an aha moment that it was Playing Through the Fence, and that is pretty symbolic in looking back at your childhood. Explain what that's all about.
Okay, so when I was growing up in the rolling hills of Tennessee, deep south, my family and I, which was 5 siblings, my parents, lived in an all-black neighborhood, except there was one house next door that was a white family lived there. They moved in, and there was a young girl by my age that we became fast friends. But what separated our properties was this wire-tattered disrepair fence, and we played through that fence. And the reason we played through the fence was because of the racial times, the unrest. She was not allowed to come in my yard. I was not allowed to go in her yard. So we had to play through the fence. And so that fence became symbolic for me over the years, as I would find myself in a similar place, wanting what was on the other side.
I find that very interesting. Even the fact that they didn't want her in your yard, but they lived in an all-black neighborhood. So that's pretty interesting in itself, right?
Why they moved there, I really couldn't tell you. I have no clue. I was young, and certainly it wasn't discussed with me, but they were there. Now, there was a white grocery store owner, and farther down the neighborhood, there were a couple more white families. So it was predominantly black, but there were a couple of white families.
So you and this young lady, her name was?
Jane.
Jane. You played through the fence for how long?
Oh, for, I would say a few years. Ultimately, they moved away, and I don't recall when they moved away, but I think it was early on. And certainly when I became older in my teens, they were not there anymore, so probably a few years, I would say.
Wow. So this book is part memoir, as you've shared, the whole concept of you and Jane forming a friendship and playing through the fence. But it's also part self-help, and you've recruited 18 other women to have them write about the challenges that they deal with in leadership and perseverance despite the broad issues of adversity that they may have dealt with in their lives. So I find that very interesting. So this is not only a piece of Mary, but a piece of other women who are, many of them right here in the Milwaukee area that people are familiar with. Talk about who some of those women are and how they've loaned their stories to this book.
Well, there are 18 of them, and I really hate to, without my notes, to name and start naming because they're all so important, every single story in the book. But Christy Garcia Thomas, Margaret Hennessy.
I do have some of the names here, just not to put so much pressure on you.
That
There's Faith Colas, who's working with the Salvation Army now, and of course many people know her as the widow of Eric Vaughn, and she's also done some outstanding journalism here in the Milwaukee area. And then Burnell Hooker, who works with Images of Us Sports and use sports to really give that you can do it power to young girls and young women. And I love what she brings to that. And both of them have been on this show to talk about the things that they do. You mentioned Margaret Henningsen, then there's Dolores Sims, Joan Kessler, and Tina Chang, and that's just naming a few. All of these women have outstanding journeys and stories, and so this collection of personal stories exposes gritty realities with a constant reminder that where there is an obstacle, there is an opportunity. So if you would share with us some of the things that come to mind with you and your days in corporate America, or even in the medical field where you had to deal with those type of issues.
One of the stories that's in the book and really stands out in my mind is when early on I also wanted to be, after I left the medical field, I went into business and I started as a clerk typist, and I taught myself how to type. So I'm a self-made typist. I moved up, and my ultimate goal then was to become an executive secretary. I mean, I saw executive secretaries around me, and I liked what they did and what they stood for. And I didn't see a lot of women of color. I didn't really see any women of color. And I decided that's what I wanted to be. And so I did work with a particular company and gentleman who was Hispanic in nature, and he did not appreciate having me there as his secretary. And ultimately, I decided that it was time to move on. And in the book, it talks about that. You know, there are times when it's just time to go, and that doesn't mean that you fail. It's just time to go. But one thing he said to me was, the day that I left, he called me in his office and he said, "You know, Mary, you make a pretty good regular secretary, but you will never be an executive secretary."
Wow.
And I remember biting the inside of my lip because I didn't want to cry. And I managed to get out, and this is all I said was, "I will become an executive secretary." 3 months later, after I left that company, I did become an executive secretary at another 500 Fortune 500 company. And so the book is about perseverance, looking inside, being that leader, because we all have those leader qualities. And don't accept no. Don't accept no if you know in your heart it's in you. Don't accept no. You have to look at perseverance and finding the right support system to help you to push through and to move forward. And that's what these 19 women talk about, how they faced an adversity and how they overcame that adversity.
And made it anyway.
Made it anyway.
Absolutely. And sometimes your support system has to just be yourself. You know, it's about building your own confidence, knowing what you're capable of doing, and there will be people and things that get in the way here and there, but you just kind of step over those and keep going, right?
You do, but in the book it talks about networking, mentoring. People underestimate the power of mentoring, and I encourage individuals to seek mentors, not just one. Mentors, you can have several mentors, and mentors will change as you grow, change, and develop. Your mentors will grow, change, and develop too. So look at mentors as being broad, but they're a huge asset to you. They can help you navigate. They can help point you in the right direction. So mentors, networking is very, very important.
Yes, and I would agree, because a lot of times, you know, somebody who's coming up maybe fresh out of college, and they may have a mentor that's been there and done everything they're trying to do, to be able to pick up the phone or make a visit and someone tell you, you know, how it worked out for them, or give their advice on what you should or shouldn't do, is very helpful. And it doesn't have to always be a mentor just in business.
No.
A mentor in just your personal living. Maybe you just got married and you've got a mentor who's been married 50 years. You know, you got to have somebody that
your church, your friend, your wherever you network, you can have mentors. Whatever those needs are, wherever you are. Your best friend could actually be your mentor.
Yes.
But people don't think of that. Because if that best friend has something to offer that you need and willing to share that, then that's mentoring.
I think that's wonderful. So, of course, we have to tell people who are at home watching how they can get a copy of Playing Through the Fence.
They can get it certainly on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Boswell, my website, mjdowell.com. And it's also in the Milwaukee Public Library. I'm so proud of that.
Well, that is wonderful. Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
And since you mentioned your website, mjdowell.com, on there you do talk about how you are able to conduct workshops and do coaching and mentoring through MJ Dowell and Associates. So this is something else that you've worked on, where you're able to take all of your expertise and all of the things that you've learned over the years and put it to work.
Right. So once I retired from Johnson Controls, I decided to start my own business, and that is MJ Dowell and Associates, and I do coaching, HR work, public speaking workshops. So it's a wide gamut of what I do.
I love it.
It all has to do with leadership. Even my workshop is called The Leader Within. So it's all about the book. The book is a backdrop for leadership and how you become a leader and how you do that through perseverance and overcoming adversity.
Yes, and I just love what you did with that title, Playing Through the Fence.
Thank you so much.
So is there a scenario where you've crossed that fence? What happened once you crossed the fence?
If you talk in the book, when I speak about it, when I give presentations, when I talk about what happened with Jane and I, when my mother and I were summoned because there was something that happened at the home of Jane's, and when we crossed that fence, what we found on the other side.
Woo, so you got to get the book and
find out what happened.
Now that is what I call a tease. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, my
pleasure. It has
pleasure.
been a pleasure talking to you. Mary Dowell is the author of Playing Through the Fence, stories from 19 women who challenge stereotypes, prejudice, and other barriers to achieve career success. For more information, again, you can visit mjdowell.com. And when we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll connect with 2 more local authors who will fill us in on their latest work. We'll meet Kwabena Anton Nixon and Tanisha Bentley right after this.